Welcome back to Unapologetic Leadership. Today is leadership lessons from a hotel, or actually a hostel in San Diego. In unfamiliar places. And I just had the most, I think, cool experience, very interesting and creative experience. And what I've realized is that sometimes lessons don't just come from the boardroom, but they come from a bunk bed. And sometimes unexpected changes in a conference venue, like I had, turn things around in terms of where I stayed. And one of my goals that I just learned about is these hostel experiences. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's spelled Hostel. And it sounds like a lot of people know about them, but maybe I've been sheltered for some reason. But basically, they're typically backpacking experiences where a backpacker's hotel, basically, or a backpacker's hostel. And I stayed at the California Dreams Backpackers Hostel in San Diego. And that's just this week as I'm going to this 5-day conference. And as I learned about hostels earlier this year, people were just telling me how it's a cool experience for you to meet people. It's very inexpensive, anywhere from $20 a night to roughly $40 a night for this particular one. And this California Dreams, it was right on the Pacific Ocean and basically 1 block away. So if you're a I was going to say a skydiver since I'm so much into aviation, but if you're a surfer or just traveling around and want to spend very little money staying in a place and you're just looking at surfing or looking at meeting some good people, as I was told, that you meet some interesting people from all around that come through, that pretty chill, all kinds of things. Are like, oh man, that sounds cool. So when I go to San Diego, I'm like, I'm going to stay at a hostel for 5 days. But as it turns out, our venue was changed further away from San Diego. So I ended up having to cancel the hostel. But I said, wait a minute, instead of canceling it completely, why can't I do 1 day or one night at this hostel? And I can do the rest of the 4 nights at a hotel closer to the venue. So I decided that. I ended up canceling, my 5 days at the hostel, booking one, cost a little more because it was last minute, but I still got to check that one bucket list off my item just to be creative, have this adventure, to journey, to meet some people, and to just get out of my typical comfort zone. And the coolest part is that this unexpected change, I only stayed there one night, but I had a great meal at a restaurant that was just next door. It was a New Zealand style restaurant. I can't remember exactly the name, but it was something like bareback something. But it was a great hamburger and French fries, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." So it's interesting how sometimes when our plans change, that we get some unintentional either benefits or learning experiences. And one of the questions too is how is our mindset when these changes happen? So I'm just going to go through, some of the experiences I've had just with this hostel and the change of plans with the event venue that we're in. So, this episode it talks about what happens when comfort gives way to curiosity and how God uses these disruptions to strengthen our leadership. And a question here is how do you respond when plans fall apart? And how do you trust what you can't control? That's something that I've dealt with for most of my life. I've always been a planned out person. Even when having kids with my wife, I'm like, ooh, we're going to plan this out. Baby's going to be delivered on Saturday. We're going to be back home Sunday. I'll be back to work. I was all about just being a workaholic and got to make the money. And that was my biggest focus. And that I had to control everything. And I thought I could. Otherwise, I'd be so stressed out and so anxious about so many different things. So here's a Bible verse that is pretty awesome. And it says, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And that's in Proverbs 16. Again, Proverbs 16, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. And how many years and decades have I not allowed the Lord to establish my steps? I'm like, nope, I'm in control. I got this, God. I've been doing good so far. I don't really need that much of your help. I got you on the weekends. I'll worship in your house on the weekends or check it out virtually. But it's like, I realize as I reflect back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really wasn't trusting God in hardly any of my life, or consulting or looking to God first in my life for that wisdom, that direction from the Almighty Creator. Oh my gosh. And I've just had to learn some hard lessons, and especially when in terms of control. And like I said, just like with my family life, it was like, oh, I want to have this many kids. I want to have them at this timing, and just try to force out that along with everything else, including my career, my business, and everything else into this box that I thought that I could just control, that I thought I wanted. And some of the coolest part of this is that when challenges happen and when unexpected things happen, maybe they're not even challenges, they're just unexpected. That sometimes they can, once again, be the biggest blessings that we have. And sometimes these detours can lead us off in a better direction than what we typically would have thought. So I urge you, number one, seek God every day. And if you can do that at the beginning of your day, once you get up, if you have a routine that you get up early enough, or you're able to contemplate or pray in the bed before you get up, whatever it is, seek God's wisdom. And sometimes you may not have the words for the prayer. And I talked to one of my friends, her mother. She just said over the years, and I think she's in her 70s, maybe 80s, but she said over the years, she says sometimes she has not had the words for prayer, and all she could say was just help, 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 help. And knowing that she was reaching out to God, and that God is faithful and is always listening to us. He hears us, which is pretty awesome. So when arriving at San Diego, and due to the facility changes, as I said, that I had rescheduled my hotel or hostel stay, and basically stayed there one night. That was awesome. I was able to walk on the beach. The weather was beautiful. I was able to spend some time, and just in this very open mindset, and just being in awe and just appreciating what was around me, not thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm staying in this $30 a night hostel, not knowing what I'm going to get. But when I got in there and I finally checked in, I'm like, oh my gosh, the front of this is a surf shop pretty much, and they rent, like most of the places around here. They rent all types of equipment, surfboards, wetsuits, everything, and it wasn't fancy. I don't know what I'm expecting, and I apologize for laughing so much, but I just going in with this childlike faith, or just childlike wonder, and just not having any expectations, just being open to the experience. I've had to learn that over the last several years, instead of being so controlled in everything I do. And it's been wonderful. I've been so at peace. I've experienced so much joy, and just allowing God to lead me in different directions that I probably wouldn't have planned myself. But once I got in, met this nice lady, she checked myself and somebody else in, and then she shared, took us around to the open area. Okay, here's where kind of the living room is, where y'all can hang out. Here's a kitchen. You're welcome to cook whatever you want. Just clean your stuff up. Every morning they cook breakfast for you between 8:30 and 10. I'm like, why so late? 8:30 and 10. Most hotels that I go to during the week are their breakfast starts at 6 and then goes to about 8:30. So right about the same time that this hostel breakfast started. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. These are backpackers. These are people who are here to surf and are kind of transient, not looking for much to go on. So they're probably staying out late and getting up late. So I thought that was a total interesting thing of the breakfast starting at 8:30 and ending at 10 a.m. So just a different mindset, just a different experience. And also when they took us into the bedroom area, there's basically one bedroom on the side that I was on, and it shared, what was it, 7 bunks. So basically that meant 2 beds per bunk. So 14 people could stay in there. So I had one of the spots, spot number 4. And then at the end of the hall, they had this locker that they said, hey, here's a locker. If you brought a lock, great. If not, you can rent one. But the locker wasn't big enough to put all my luggage in, just big enough to get my laptop and a few other things in there. So I was like, ooh, that's interesting. And I kind of knew there was going to be very limited space to store stuff, but I didn't know how big the locker was going to be. I thought I'd be able to carry my luggage, but it didn't. So I locked my laptop up there, but since there wasn't enough space, put my huge piece of luggage underneath our bunk beds, which is open storage space. And I'm like, oh, I hope nobody steals my stuff. And that's probably one of the most discomforting things. It's like, ooh, I'm kind of about sleeping. Actually, it was a co-ed dorm, so we had men and women in there. And I just didn't know what level of people were going to be in there, how trustworthy were they there, do they have any personal space issues or keeping their hands off of things. And I just wasn't sure, but the lady said, we usually don't have any problems with that, but you can store your stuff under the bed. And I'm like, thinking in my head, usually don't have problems. I'm like, okay, that's not a guarantee, but I guess it's something, which allowed me to trust God in this case. Just really trust God and say, hey, if things get stolen, they can be replaced as long as everybody's kept safe in that place. And that was my biggest issue. So it allowed me to have peace, just trusting in God. And like I said, even if something gets taken, oh well, God is still out there protecting, watching. And so I surrendered control and just trusted God in that situation. And this was very unfamiliar to me. Once again, I've never been to one of these, and I've always had my own hotel room. But being around unfamiliar people, unfamiliar routines, all of that was just a little bit uncomfortable. And I didn't know if it was going to be kind of like a Motel 6 experience to some degree, since they had breakfast. I'm like, oh, they've got some amenities. Or if it's going to be like a Ritz Carlton. And it definitely was not like a Ritz Carlton, and it definitely was not even close to a Motel 6. So one of the lessons here is that leadership doesn't begin when everything is in order. It's revealed when nothing goes as planned. Very interesting. Your leadership is revealed when things get out of control a little bit, out of your own control, and maybe what your expectations are. So I ended up checking out of that experience, and I'll go back on a few more things, but I ended up checking out after that one day. And that's when I actually met two cool people, because I got there really late the first day, and my flight came in, and I wasn't able to have too many experiences with people there. But and I was exhausted. But the next day when I checked out, since that checkout took forever, at least it seemed like it took quite a long time, and things were slow moving. That was able to check out and talk with two people there. And the funny part about that, right before I checked out, is that I was in the common area getting my stuff packed up, getting ready to grab an Uber, and this one guy just starts playing Christmas music off his laptop in the common area. And one of the volunteers who was sitting there on her laptop, she was like, "Oh my goodness!" And she didn't say that, but she ended up leaving and going to the other side, basically where they check you out at the desk, because she was a volunteer there. And then once I checked out, and went over there, she started talking about the experience of the guy with the mutton chops that snored all night. And I'll get back to that experience in just a second. But just the whole experience, and then how he didn't really have common courtesy, I guess, if you will, of what everybody else wanted to listen to. And just like on airplanes, probably could have had his headset in, but he just didn't have that, and nobody spoke to him about it. So that was that. And just met another good guy checking out, and just his name was Brock, and he's like, "Oh yeah, man, and surfing and this and that," and invited me to come out, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome." So it was a pretty cool experience. However, during the night at the hostel, what happened here? Yes, I was exhausted. It's about 8 o'clock Pacific time, and I was like, oh my gosh, my eyes are heavy. So I started to go to bed, and I noticed somebody else go to bed. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. People are going to bed at 8 o'clock for whatever reason. And then I noticed that as I was starting to get in bed and everything, then the lights kind of dimmed down at 9 o'clock automatically. Like, wow, that's pretty early. But they want to allow people to, if they want to start sleeping early, you can do that, rather than people being up till 9, 10, 11, 12 a.m. and interrupting other people's sleep. But I went to sleep peacefully, just trusted. And I don't know if you guys have seen the Avatar movie, and I'm thinking of the first one back a long time ago. And that one I just think of when Grace first, oh, maybe that was Sully, either one of those two. But when they transitioned into their avatar body, they ended up being in these big bunks kind of out near where the jungle was. And before they fell asleep, they're just kind of going to sleep to all these weird noises going on at night and just other kinds of things going on, and just kind of this wonderment of, wow, what are we going to see out in this oh, I can't even remember the name of the planet, but the not with the Navi people and everything else that's going to go on in this jungle that you just have no idea what kind of beasts and animals are out there ready to, as one of the colonels said, to poke your eyes out and eat them as jujubes, or whatever he's. But that's how I felt in this hostel. I was like, I feel like I'm out in the jungle somewhere, just totally out of my element. But I had the peace because I was just trusting in God and trusting in this adventure and experience. And I realized, my perspective shifted, and to just kind of surrender yourself. It's amazing if you haven't done that before. And just trusting God and trusting, He's there wherever you are. And just like I said, with my bags being out in the open, even if something got stolen, it was replaceable. But my peace was not replaceable. So God taught me just to relax and just to observe and trust and just to release control. And you have no idea how good that feels. It's a little scary, but you have no idea how good that feels when you are just releasing control and just trusting how God has brought you to this place and how God has carried you through most of your life, all of your life. And you just haven't realized it. You thought you were in control. So here's a question. Where in your life are you gripping control instead of trusting in provision? Just trusting that you'll be taken care of. Because we don't need to have a grip on our life in everything we do. That's not good. That's anxiety. That's being anxious. That's being stressed out, trying to control and worried about everything all the time. You seriously need to take a breather, take a faith breather, take rest in your faith, in your hope in God, and trust. And that's where faith comes in, because faith without works, and that works in this case is just trusting and relaxing back. Faith without works is dead, and that's what Scripture says. Another interesting story, if you think about just the whole idea of unexpected things happening that are out of our control, that many times we think, oh, that's going to be a bad deal because we didn't plan for that. Well, if you remember or don't know of the story of 3M when trying to create a powerful adhesive, the experiment failed and the glue was weak. It could barely stick and it wasn't useful. Years later, someone realized it was perfect for the removable notes and bookmarks that we call post-it notes today. So because of that failure, something beautiful has come out of that. Something useful has come out of it. And how many people, even today in our high tech world, are still using visual post it notes to write notes on, to do dream boards, to plan out a project, whatever it is, from a failed adhesive. But somebody used their creativity to turn that around and to find use out of it. So I think that's one of the best examples, because I just thought, post-it notes are post-it notes. That was their intended design. Nope, that was a mistake. But the coolest part is that through these mistakes or challenges, we can learn from all of these and learn to look at the positive situation. And that's where your leadership, your mindset, your belief all come into place as to, are you in it to win it? Are you in it to learn? Are you willing to take some of these setbacks and allow them to become breakthroughs? And that's a huge thing. That is a huge thing. And I know many times, and I've worked hard for something and have planned and put the plans in place. But as I've heard many people say that, yeah, sometimes God laughs at us when we put our plans in place because he knows something else is going to happen and God has different plans for our life. And that's always because he loves us. He wants something better for us, or to learn and work in us and through us for his purpose, which I'd rather have God on my team and be on God's team, which to me, that's the the Super Bowl team that wins every single year. And I don't care if that Super Bowl team, you got 2 seconds on the clock, it's the fourth quarter, the end of the game is about to happen in 2 seconds, and God's team is down 400 points. God is going to win that game. Yes, if that's God's will, God will win that seemingly impossible game because God's ways are not our ways. And when we tap into God, look to God, and look for that wisdom, it's amazing the things that can be revealed in our lives and just the blessings, not just for us, but our businesses, our colleagues, our leadership teams, our clients, and then also in our personal lives, our families, our friends, and our relationships and everything we're doing. So some frameworks that will help you out is that pause before you panic. Pause before you panic and ask a question. What might God be doing through this disruption? Again, what might God be doing through this disruption? Next one is reframe the situation. What is this teaching me? Why me? Why not me? And sometimes if we're asking that in a cynical way, that could be a bad deal. Why is this happening to me all the time? Well, maybe because you're not listening to the message, not taking action where you should be taking action, or allowing things to happen. Similar to if you had a teammate or a leader, a person on your team, or a leader that needs to learn and grow. Are you allowing them to make mistakes that give them some confidence and give them some ownership and help them to change and improve what they're doing? Are we in a coaching mindset, or are we always micromanaging? Ooh, that probably struck the hearts of a few of you right there. Are we always micromanaging? And many times you are, which says basically you don't trust the people that you're working with. So let's have trust over control. And that's where also your faith begins, with the predictability. And so many different lessons you can learn just by slowing down a little bit. Another area is to stay teachable. Do you know everything? Are you the smartest person in the room? Well, maybe you need to back off and start having some open eyes and a heart of learning and appreciation. And when somebody makes a mistake, having grace and being forgiving. Because how many mistakes have you made? How many mistakes have I made? And I've been given so many different second chances or different learning experiences that, okay, that mistake wasn't fatal. That wasn't the end of the world, even though I pretended like it was. And my mindset and all my thoughts and internal words that I said was as if it was the end of the world. It wasn't. So stay teachable. Also, one thing that's helped me out is really having a simplified focus, stripping out all the distractions as best you can. So many times that's not watching all the streaming channels, whether that's Netflix or YouTube, TikTok, all your different media, whether you're texting app, WhatsApp, whatever it is, but getting away from that and just having moments of silence, just allowing your brain to process things. Because many times with this simplified focus, when everything else feels unstable, you simplify your focus and then things become extremely clear. Insights happen. And you also develop and hone in on your purpose with your business, purpose in your organization, and purpose with people. So fix your eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, which is in Scripture, 2 Corinthians 4. Again, fix your eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. And truly, clarity doesn't come from the environment. It comes from focus. It comes from a focus. It doesn't come from what's around you, what's happening externally. That may be some feedback for you, but your clarity does not come from outside of you. Start from within, because if you're not clear and you're unfocused, you haven't developed a good decision-making framework, or maybe you're just not at peace and trusting that you can't always 100% control the outcomes of things. You can control, in most cases, the inputs, but you can't control always the outcomes, which is why there's never a process that works for everyone and every situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It might be a one-size-fits-many, but it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. So you have to tailor things to what's going on in your situation, your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses. So be considerate of that. Don't just take things at what they are. So here's some questions for reflection. What are you resisting in terms of change that could grow you? What outcome are you trying to control that isn't yours to manage? Boom, that's a mic drop one for me and for many of you, I'm sure. What outcome are you trying to control that isn't yours to manage? What mistake have you judged too quickly that might produce something new? It's amazing, once again, when you allow some mistakes to happen with yourself, you have grace, or if somebody else has made a mistake and you have grace and you create some learning experiences from that, you allow trust to grow, you give confidence in that person, and see what else and opportunities this could create, or what process maybe do you need to eliminate or revise in order for that to work more efficiently or more effectively. What would faith look like in your current frustration? Just think of one frustration that's happened earlier today or maybe this week. What would your faith look like when used, when trusted in, when sought after first in your current frustration? So these are things you can also journal. You can pray about these things, ask God to give you guidance and wisdom, all types of things that you can do to refocus, to settle yourself, and to get grounded. So the real test of leadership isn't about comfort, it's adaptability, trusting God, and disruption just might be the direction. That's one thing I've had to get used to is disruption and change. I've liked things to be in order most of my life, but now I'm trusting in those disruption, and I'm getting used to that. And the more I get used to it, the more excited I am. Ooh, with this disruption, wow, what great things are going to come out of this? What opportunities are going to happen because of this? And just realize that peace doesn't come from perfect plans. It comes from aligned perspective. So find an area this week that you're gripping too tightly and replace that control with trust. God often hides leadership lessons in life's frustrations. If this episode spoke to you, share it with a leader who's navigating some uncertainty or who has maybe too much anxiety or is gripping their circumstances too strongly and needs to loosen up that grip. This is Cory Dunham, and this is Unapologetic Leadership. Stay adaptable, stay aligned, and stay anchored in faith.